Resident Evil Village is here, and it's freaking awesome. That's not the point of this video, but I just want you to know that it is incredible, and you should check out our review. But more importantly, this video right here is to tell you that if you're a Resident Evil veteran excited to play Village, you should consider playing the game on hardcore difficulty for your first time. As somebody who plays way too much Resident Evil and knows all the series tricks, one of the few issues I had with Resident Evil Village was that I thought it was a bit too easy on standard mode, and it's easy to feel a little too comfortable while playing. For me, the ideal Resident Evil experience is one where you are constantly riding the line of having just barely enough ammo and health to survive. Learning to play smarter on a higher difficulty rewards you with some extra breathing room, but it just takes a few bad mistakes for resources to dwindle and to put you into some serious danger. This to me is the secret sauce of Resident Evil's survival horror, and my favorite games in the franchise nail that dynamic. My first time playing Village on standard, however, I rarely found myself in this sweet spot of tension. Ammo was never really a problem, and as a result, I barely touched the game's crafting system simply because I never needed to. It wasn't until the final fourth of the game that things ramped up and ammo scarcity and health became more serious. As a result, I only died a handful of times, most of which were a factor of the game's environment or timing-based challenges, not combat. The game has all of the pieces in place to make a harrowing survival experience work, but the balance just isn't quite right, and I don't think that standard demanded I take full advantage of its mechanics as much as I would like. This isn't necessarily an indictment of the standard mode, it's not bad by any means. It's simply that as a veteran of the Resident Evil series, I am bringing with me all of my knowledge of how these games work, and take advantage of that. Nailing headshots, avoiding enemies you don't need to kill, scavenging every possible nook and cranny for items and money, this game absolutely rewards this kind of play. On standard, you'll often find yourself feeling a bit too powerful and prepared than what the setting might suggest. This, of course, has its own benefits. Not worrying as much about ammo frees you to focus more on the act of combat itself, which gets really fun when the hordes of Lycans start to flood in. So, before I go any further, I should say that it is 1000% okay to play the game on standard, if that's what you enjoy. I personally like that terrifying feeling of having your back against the wall, that's why I love the series. But some people just want something a little more relaxed, and that's okay. You also might be the kind of player whose skill level is more attuned for standard, and will find it to be the right level of challenge. So don't let anyone tell you you're lesser for it. Difficulties exist for a reason, and people play games differently. All of that said, if you crave that resource management, the stress of not having enough first aid, and love it when one wrong move can turn a good run into sheer tension, then I'm gonna recommend you play your first time on hardcore. After finishing the game, I loaded up a fresh save on hardcore to see if it scratched that itch, and I was not disappointed. It only takes a swing or two to go from full health to into the red, leaving a lot less room for error when it comes to getting hit. Playing it safe, learning the right time to dodge, and running a hallway back to give yourself distance becomes mandatory, even with weaker foes. It's not that it's hard, it's that it asks you to put your all into each and every fight and always be alert. Something that I never quite felt on standard, since damage from enemy hits were more lax. I also found myself engaging with the block more often, something I rarely touched on standard because I never felt in enough danger that I needed to rely on it. It's in hardcore that you realize how important blocking really is. The damage reduced when blocking is a lot more significant than you might think, probably because you wouldn't think blocking an axe swing with your hands would be all that effective. But seriously, the difference between taking a hit and blocking is huge. You're so vulnerable in hardcore that you need to use it all the time, particularly in close encounter fights, where it becomes basically mandatory. Blocking also opens up a counter move where you can push enemies away and sometimes even disarm them of their weapon, a key strategy you'll want to take advantage of, and another thing that I never touched on standard. Finally, there is ammo and crafting. The amount of ammo and crafting materials gained remains the same as standard, but with enemies taking more bullets to dispatch, the balance feels much more aligned with what I was looking for. You always have just barely enough ammo to make it through an encounter, sometimes with only a few bullets remaining, and the sudden stress of needing to find more before the next thing jumps at you from around a corner. Yet it doesn't swing in the other direction of being unfair. There was only one moment where I completely ran out of ammo, and it's because I was being careless and wasting them on enemies in an optional area I was backtracking to and probably should have just dodged around them. A decision I never even contemplated on standard, but often considered while on hardcore. On hardcore, you truly appreciate how well done item placement and resource balance is, and when it's not bullets, it's crafting materials, which, you guessed it, I actually needed to use this time. Having to make the tough choice to craft a few more shotgun shells but lose material needed for a first aid is something that added a strategic layer to the hardcore experience. Despite only taking a break for a few days between playthroughs, hardcore felt very fresh. The game demanded that I engage with all of its systems and played smart. It took what I already thought was a pretty fantastic survival horror experience and elevated it to one of the best survival horror experiences I've ever had. Okay, have I convinced you that hardcore's pretty cool? Awesome. Well, I'm thrilled. But I should warn you about one thing. In a loving homage to Resident Evil 4, the first major combat encounter is a harrowing survival where you are swamped by way too many enemies to shock your system before things slow back down and settle into a more natural rhythm. It's a great set piece on standard, but it's kind of frustrating on hardcore. Despite already beating the game, I died multiple times during this moment, the coolness of it slowly washing away, leaving only frustration as I kept getting hit in the back by that one guy. Jesus, stop doing that! It's a rough sequence, especially if you're still learning how the game is played. Maybe you'll be fine with it, but I wanted to bring it up as it was the one sour note in my hardcore experience. The good thing is that once the moment has passed, the game's pacing and combat settles, and it's just excellent from then on. So if you can get past the opening encounter, you're golden. So there you go. If everything I just talked about sounds like something you're interested in, hardcore might be for you, and I would really recommend taking a risk and giving it a shot. However, I do want to reiterate that I don't think standard mode is the wrong way to experience this game. It's more that it won't demand full use of Village's gameplay systems. And that in itself comes with the benefit of having a smoother playthrough. Meanwhile, hardcore demands you learn and master the game, weigh the cost and benefit of crafting, scavenge everything, and make every bullet count. If a bit of an uphill struggle is the kind of experience you're looking for out of a Resident Evil game, you can't go wrong with hardcore. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you all have a fantastic time with Resident Evil Village. If you're watching this video and interested in hardcore, you're probably already a pretty big Resident Evil veteran, but maybe you need a little bit of a refresher, in which case we have some great survival tips from Kurt that you should go check out.